Hi guys, welcome to this video. In this video, we're going to be building a full Netflix clone using Django. So we're going to start from scratch and we're going to be using Python and Django to build out this application that you see on the screen. So this is a Netflix clone. It basically have all the main functionalities that a Netflix site should have. And I'm going to show you how to build all of this in this tutorial. And at the end of this video, I'm going to show you how to deploy this Netflix clone onto the web using a platform called Flow. So this is the platform right here. You can go to flow.com to check out the platform. So we're going to use it to deploy our application onto the web. And we're also going to use Flow to deploy the Postgres database that we're going to be using in this tutorial. So in this tutorial, we're going to be using Django and we're also going to be using Postgres for the database. And for that database, we're going to be using Flow to deploy that database, and we're going to connect that to our Netflix clone. So Flow basically allows us to easily deploy our applications and also deploy databases very quickly. So there'll be a link in the description where you can check Flow out and make sure you sign up and have an account so you can follow along with this tutorial. And having that said, let me just show you what we're going to be building. So this is Netflix clone right here that we're going to be building. It has all the main functionalities. So if I log out right now, you're going to see it redirects me to this login page, and there's also a sign up page. I'm just going to log in right now, and once I click on login, just say not now, it's going to log me in and it's going to take me to the home page. So as you can see right here, it takes me to the home page and I can browse a bunch of films in here, and I can click on this and it's going to show me details of this movie. So it's going to show me the name, the year it came out, the length of the movie, and I can also click to play. So if I click on play, you're going to see right here, it's going to take me to the page to play. So we just input, or we just fixed like this basic video right here, but this is not the video you're actually going to be using if you're building this out. But just to make things simple, we put this basic page right here. Now if you go back and let's say I click on Breaking Bad, now I could add Breaking Bad to list, and you're going to see that this is going to be added to the list, to my list, and it's going to say added. Now that Breaking Bad is added to my list, if I go to my list right here, it shows all the list of the films that I have on my application. And if I go back home and I click on, let's say, the Breaking Bad again, and I try to add that to my list, so if I try to add this to my list, it's going to tell me that this movie is already in my list, so I can't really add this again. So movie already in list. Now all of this is being done without the page refreshing. Now there are also more functionalities that we're going to be talking about. We have the search functionality, we have genres, and more that we're going to be talking about. We have the features section, and that's everything we're going to be doing in this video. So without wasting any time, let's get started with this course. Now the first thing we are going to do is to create a new Django project. So I'm going to go into a folder on my document and I'm going to create a Django project in that folder. So what I'm just going to do is to say cd documents. Right now I am just in the root directory of my computer, but now I have gone into documents and I'm going to go into a folder named projects. And in this project I'm going to say mkdir, and I'm going to create Netflix, and I'm going to cd into Netflix. Now if I press ls, this is going to be blank, and let me just clear this to let everything look neat. Now the next thing I'm going to do is to now create a new Django project in this folder. So I'm going to say Django-admin start project Netflix. I'm just going to say something like Netflix site. I'm going to say ls, and now I can cd into Netflix site. If I press ls, now you can see that we have the manage.py. This means that a Django project has been created successfully and we have Netflix site. Now the next thing I'm going to do before I move forward is to just create a Django app right here. I'm going to say python 3 manage.py start app. I'm going to name it core. And if I press ls, you can see right here that core is there. Now what I'm just going to do is to open up this particular project now in VS Code. So if I swipe right, this is my VS Code right here. and I'm just going to open up a new project. So just say open folder, and right here in open folder, I'm just going to navigate to where it is, and I'm just going to go into our projects, Netflix, and Netflix site. Now once I open this, it's going to pop up a new window. I'm just going to close this. Now as you can see, a new window has been popped up, and the project that we just created is right here. We can see every single thing right here. So I'm hoping that you have a basic knowledge of Django for you to follow along with this tutorial. But if you don't worry, I'm going to take you through everything that we're going to be doing in this tutorial. Now the next thing that we're just going to do is to basically just set up the static and template files. So right here, what I'm just going to do is to create a new folder. Or before I do this, let's just make sure that this application is successfully running. So I'm going to bring up a new terminal. So right here, I'm going to bring up a new terminal. I'm going to say Python pre-manage.py run server. So this is the command used in Django to run your application to see what you're actually building. Now this says you have 18 unapplied migrations. Your project may not work properly until you migrate for apps. That means until you migrate all of this app. Now it's saying we should run this command to migrate them. Don't worry about this. We're going to take care of this later in this video. So don't worry about all these migrations right now. This is where it's going. This is going to come into play when we are dealing with databases. So don't worry about this for now. And I'm just going to close this right here. And what I'm going to do is to come here on my browser, and I'm just going to open up this. So once you go into 127.0.0.1 with the port of 8000, this link or this basic URL right here is going to open up the Django project that you're building. In this case, this is what we are building. So as you can see, it says the install worked successfully. Now this just means that the Django project that we created right here has been successful, and it's just showing us the default Django template. But now we don't want it to show us this. What we want is our own front end, our own design. Now what we're just going to do is to set that up, and we're going to change it from showing this to our own Netflix design. I'm just going to come back here, and then what I'm going to do is to create a new we're going to create a new directory. We're going to name it templates. We're going to create another directory, and we're going to name it static. And now this is a file. We don't need a file, so we're just going to go ahead and delete this file. We're going to move this to trash, and the next thing we want to do is to create a new directory and name it static. Now right here in template, I'm just going to bring in some files that we're going to be needing. So I'm just going to come here, and what we're just going to do is to copy all of these files. So these are the files that I've created for this particular Netflix clone. So all of these are just the HTML files, and if we open up assets, we have the CSS files. So I'm just going to copy all of this right here, and I'm going to swipe it and go into VS Code. So we're just going to go and open right here in VS Code. Let's just make sure that is working, and nope, that didn't work. So what we're just going to do is to use like a shortcut. So I'm just going to drag my VS Code right here, and right now, since it's beside this finder, I could just easily copy and paste. I'm just going to drag it, and now that it's here, now what we can just do is to paste it right here under templates. So as you can see, everything now has been pasted on that template. We copied it from here and pasted it on that template. Now what we can do is that when a user tries to visit this home page, we can just say we want to show this index.html file, or let's say we want to show login.html file. We're going to go ahead and do that in a bit. But the next thing we want to do is to take care of static. So just the way we added the HTML files, which is going to be the face and the front end of this particular project, we also need the static files, which are the CSS files that is going to be used right here in this project. So let's go ahead and copy that. We're going to do the same thing, and then we're just going to take that, and then we're going to copy that. So we're just gonna make sure this works right here. Okay, let's make sure that works. So we're just gonna do that again. So we do this, copy. Yes, that has been done, and paste. So now this is done successfully. Now the next thing is just that now Django basically knows where to find all of these template files. I mean, till now it doesn't really know where to find it, but this is the first step in telling Django where to actually find all of these files. Now what we need to do is to go into, just gonna collapse this. I'm gonna go into Netflix site, and once you come into the main project, we're going to come into settings.py. Before we move forward, let me explain something. So remember when we created this Django project, we also created an app. So the name of the project is Netflix site, but the app is core. So once you're creating a Django project, you need at least one app under that project. So think of a project as the main application or the main project, the main website that you're building, and think of an app as like a subset or like a subsection of that whole project. So for example, think of facebook.com as the project, as the main project of that website, and then think of, let's say, messages under Facebook as one app. So it's a section of the Facebook platform. So that is the difference between a Django app and a Django project. But for most apps or most projects that you're going to work on with Django, you mainly need one or two apps. But most of the time, as I said, you need one or two apps. But sometimes, depending on how large your project is, of course, you might need more than that. But for this particular project, we're just going to be using one app, and that app is core. Now, the next thing that we're going to do right here in settings. So settings is in the project directory, which is Netflix site. And what we just need to do is to first import OS. So what we're doing right now is we've created these files where we've stored the template file and the static files, but we want to tell Django that whenever we're trying to call these template files, Django should go into this template folder to look for those template files. So let's say we want to return, a user comes to the home page and we want to return index.html. We need to tell Django that you need to look for that index.html file in the template folder. Now let's do that. Right here in settings, we have to scroll down to where we see templates and where we see theirs. So right here in theirs, what we just need to do is to say base there. Now what this base there is saying is, base there just basically means the root directory. Now the root directory of a Django project is the directory that has this manage.py file. So where you see this manage.py file, that is the root directory of that project. So now we're saying in the root directory, go into template folder. So that is what we're saying. So whenever a user tries to come access a template, the directory should be the templates folder in the base directory, which is this particular directory, and that's where it can look for the template files. Now the second thing is the static. As I said, static is very important because once we write this index.html or whatever HTML, we need the CSS file to actually style it so it can look nice, and that is where the static files come in. We also need to tell Django where to look for these static files. For us to do this, we're going to scroll down similarly to what we did in templates. So as you can see, automatically Django has this variable named static URL because automatically it knows we should use static. But the next thing we're going to do is to add two particular variables, and I'm going to show you what we are adding. So the first one right here is static files there. Files underscore theirs. Now this is going to be a list. And we're going to say os.path.join base directory static. So now what this is just saying is whenever we try to get a static file, go into the static folder in the base directory or the root directory, which is basically this folder. Now this is a list, so let's just add the comma here to avoid any errors in the future. Now the second thing we need to specify is called static root. We're going to specify it under here. I'm going to say static underscore root, and that's going to be equals to os.path.join, and then we're going to say base there static files. So you don't really need to worry about what this does for now. We're going to talk about it at the end of this tutorial when we're actually deploying this project to the web. So this is used for when we put our project to production, so when we are deploying it. So we're going to run a command called collect static, and it's going to move all of these static files to another folder named static files. So for now, just write this, but don't really worry about its functionality. So now that we have all of this done, the next thing we can now do is to just get started with actually setting up the URLs. So now, instead of a user coming to this particular page, we want a user to be able to go into this index.html page that we already created right here. Now, to set up URLs, we can close up this settings.py file, and we're going to come into the app, which is core, and we're going to create a new file named urls.py. Now in these URLs, we're going to say from Django.urls import path, and in here we'll say URL patterns equals to, and now we're going to say path blank views dot index name equals index. I'm just going to explain what all of this does. So we're just importing the path from URLs, from Django.urls to be specific. So this path basically allows us to create a new URL. Now in a URL in Django is basically every single page. So this home page is a URL. If we have, let's say, this /login, this is another URL, login. So that is how we specify every single URL in Django. We use this path, and right here, this just means that we're specifying for the home URL. So whenever a user comes to our site, let's say our site is mysite.com. So once they go to www.mysite.com, this specifies what should be done. If we wanted to specify for what should be done when a user goes to the login page, then we just write in here login. But that is not what we are doing right here. So I'm just gonna undo that. And now it's saying views.index. So what this is saying is that when a user tries to come into the home page, go into the views file and then look for a function named index. Right now, we don't really have a function named index, so we're just going to leave that blank for now. We're going to come back to that. But what we can just do is to now write def, or we could just say index, should take a request, and for now, we could just pass. So this is what we can do. Just create a new function that passes, and now we have an index function right here. But you can see it still gives us an error. This is because we are trying to use this views file, but we haven't imported it. So what we need to do is to say from dot import views. So now that should work. And this name is basically just the name of this URL right here. So that is what that does. Now everything should work. Not yet. The next thing we need to do is to specify what should actually be done when a user tries to come into this home URL. So right here, we're just going to return. So when a user tries to come to this home URL, we want to showcase this index.html file. So we'll say return render, and then we'll say request. It's going to take a request, and we're requesting for the index.html file. Now, because we already specified in the settings, Django now knows where to look for template files like this. So now that we say we are rendering an HTML file, it automatically knows that it's going to have to come into templates folder to look for that file. Now the next thing we want to do is to test this out, and you're going to see that it doesn't work yet. So we're just going to go to the home page like this. As you can see, it doesn't work yet. It still shows us the initial Django template. Now this is because we were specifying all these URLs right here in our app. But as I said, the app is just like a subset or a subsection of the main project. So we also need to tell the main project where to look for, files, or what to do when a user comes to the home page. Now what we are going to do is to kind of like copy this URL that we already specified here, so we don't need to rewrite it in the project URLs. So I'm just going to come into the project folder, Netflix site, and I'm going to go into urls.py, and I'm going to import something named include. And what this is just going to do is that we're going to say path, we're specifying a new path for the home page, and now we are saying include core.urls. Now let me explain quickly what this does. This is just saying that when a user tries to come to the home page, this include means go into core.urls. So core is this particular folder or this particular app. Then go into the URLs file and then look for the same URL, which is the home page. Now it's going to come into core.url and it's going to look for the same URL, which is the home page. Whatever is being done here or rendered here is what is now going to be done. Now let me just come back in here and hit refresh. So as you can see, this now works successfully. Everything is working fine. So as you can see, this shows all the styling except one problem. So once we click on one of these, nothing actually happens, and all of the modal that was created in this HTML page is just showing on the bottom. This is not what we want. Now this is because we have linked the template files, and now Django knows what to output when we try to go to the home page. But for the style, we haven't actually connected the style to this particular index.html page. I'm going to show you what I mean. So right here, we could just close up this, and I'm going to collapse this and collapse this. And in templates folder, I'm going to come into index.html. And right here, what we are saying is that we are using certain files like assets/style.css. So this assets/style.css is basically what we have in here. So we have login CSS, profile.css, style.css. So there's a mistake we actually made. All of our styling are not just in the static file. They are meant to be in a folder named assets, and this asset is meant to be under the static folder. So what I'm going to do is to first create a new folder named assets. So we're just going to say assets like that. So it should be that. And now I'm going to kind of like move all of this in here. So this should be in here. Move, and then we're going to move the last one in there. Now, if I now come back in here, so I'm just going to open up index.html again. So now as you can see, it just says go into assets/style.css, but this is not actually how Django links CSS files or any static file to HTML file. What you need to do is to add something called or something known as the static tag. So the first thing you need to do is to come to the top of the file and then say we're going to do this. So you're going to add 2 curly braces and then 2 percentage tags like this, and then you're going to say load static. So what we're just saying is we want to load all the static files so we can access them right here in this HTML page right here. So this works fine. Now the next thing we're going to have to do is to, every single time where we are linking a particular static file, like for instance in this case we are linking style.css, we have to add this syntax right here. So just right before we link it, we're going to say curly braces percentage static, then we're going to have this, and then we're going to have to close it right here and like this. So we basically have to do this for every single time we are using a static file. So as you might already guess, this is going to be a pain and this is going to be a long process. There actually is a VS Code extension that allows you to just simplify this process, because imagine you have like, let's say something like 100 CSS files, and we have to manually do or type all of this to all of those CSS files that you're linking. Of course, that is going to be a long process. Now, as I said, there is a VS Code extension, and I'm going to show you how that VS Code extension works quickly. So I'm just going to remove what we put right here. I'm going to save this, and now what I'm just going to do is to say Command Shift P, and this is going to open my command palette. Before I even show you this, let me come into my extensions right here, and I'm just going to open up that particular extension I'm talking about. So it's called Auto Django right here. This is the extension, and what it just does is that it basically automates that process of linking static files in Django. So once you install it, what you just need to do is to come here and press Command Shift P to open up your command palette, and you're going to type Auto Django, and you're going to see that Auto Django come out, and you're going to click Enter. Now, as you can see, it says static tags have now been added. Please drop a review. Now, if you now come here, you can see that the tags was automatically added every single time we require a CSS file. So if you scroll down, I think that is the only time where we require a CSS file in here. So that's why we only have it in that case. But imagine you have, and in another file that we're going to be dealing with, I think we're going to have more than one. So you're going to see how that comes very helpful in linking static files with your HTML file. So now let's see and let's save. And what we're just going to do is to come back in here. Now hit refresh. As you can see, it ends here. If I click on this, now it comes up with this, which is very good. So this is what we basically need, and this is what we want. Now the last thing that we're going to do in this section is that we are going to just complete all of the whole links. So if I open up this and come back in here, so we have login, movie, profile, we have all of this. Now what we're just going to do is that right here in the, so I'm just going to come into URLs. So right here in course.urls, what we're going to do is to just write some links for, for example, the login page, sign up page, and all of that. So what we're just going to do is to come here and say, say path login views.login and name equals login. We're going to do the same for sign up, path sign up, and we're going to say views dot sign up, and then we're going to give it a name of sign up, and now we can just save this. Now as you can see, this is basically what we need, and then we're just going to come into the views, and then what we're going to do in views is that we're going to create a new function for both login and sign up as we specified here, and we're just going to return that page. So I'm going to come back to views, and right here I'm just going to say def login request, and now we're just going to say return render request, and we're going to say login.html. Now Django knows that it's going to have to come into template folder and look for login.html. We're going to do the exact same thing for sign up. So we're going to say sign up request return render, so let's spell that correctly, and then request, and right here we're just going to say sign up.html. So this is what we need. Now if we come back in here and we hit refresh, and let's say we go to /login, boom, as you can see login shows. And if I come to sign up, okay, this says it's not working. We're going to take care of that later. But now if we change this to sign up, as you can see sign up shows. But of course the static files or the CSS file hasn't been reflected, and this is because, as I said, we haven't done what we need to do. So I'm just going to quickly do that now. The first thing I'm going to do is to just copy this load static right here, and in login I'm just going to paste it on top, and then in sign up I'm also just going to paste it on top. And now that doesn't solve the problem completely, it just allows us to start solving the problem. The next thing we need to do is to just run Command Shift P Auto Django. Now the static tags will have been added. If you come here you can see the change. We're going to save that. And for sign up also, if you come here you can see there's no static tag. Once we do Command Shift P and hit say Auto Django and hit enter, you can now see that the static tags has been added everywhere we need it. If I now come back in here and hit refresh, you're going to see the difference. You can now see that we have a very good looking sign up page where we can do everything we want by signing up. And now we're also going to get a login page, which is a very nice looking login page also, where we can get what we want. Now we're going to be creating a database for our application, and we're going to be using Flow to create a Postgres database that we're going to connect to our application. So Flow right here, as you can see, is a cloud platform that allows us to deploy backend applications and databases very quickly. So it basically allows us to deploy our application and also allows us to deploy databases. So we're going to be using their database feature to create a Postgres database, and we're going to connect that database right here in our application. And at the end of this course also, we're going to be using Flow to deploy this application onto the web. So I'm going to show you how to do both of those things using Flow. So it's actually quite easy and simple to use Flow. What you need to do is to go to flow.com, as you can see right here. There will also be a link in the description below where you can just click and you go there. So go to flow.com, and it's spelled FL0. So flow with a 0. So fl0.com, and then just get started. So once you click on get started, it's going to take you to a page where you're going to sign up. But I already have an account, so what you need to do for me is to just log in. So you can either decide to log in with Google, GitHub, or just normal email address. So what I'm going to do is, I already have an account created with my GitHub, so I'm just going to continue with GitHub and log in with GitHub. So it's going to log me in with my GitHub right now. Let's just give that a second, and we should see that logged in right now. So as you can see, I am logged in. This is what you should see when you first create a new Flow account. And now it's going to tell you to create a new workspace. So now let's just say something like Tommy workspace. And then we can create that workspace. Now this is going to create very quickly. As you can see, the workspace has been created. Now, as I said, the first thing we want to do is to create a database. So I'm just going to click on new project, and I'm just going to call this something like Netflix project, and I'm going to create the new project. So in my workspace, you're going to have to create a project. Now that project, you can do whatever. You can create a Postgres database, you can deploy the application. So everything regarding this Netflix application that we're building is going to be deployed, or is going to be deployed right here in this project. So the database is going to be deployed here, and the actual application is also going to be deployed here. So for now, let's click on create a Postgres database, and let's just leave it as database. So it says give your database a name. We're just going to say database, and then we can just create database. So we're just going to wait for that to create, and that shouldn't take a long time. So let's see. Let it load up. As you can see, that has created successfully. That was actually quite quick and fast compared to other database platforms. So now what you need to do, we already have this created. What I'm just going to do is now to connect this Postgres database to this Netflix that we're building right here. And I'm going to show you how to do this right now. So now what you need to do is to come back in here and go into connection info. Now right here in connection info, we have all the details we need to connect to this database. So we're just going to kind of like copy and paste all of this information and then paste them into our settings file. So I'm going to show you how to do that right now. So now let's just go back in here, and then we're going to come into our project. So our project folder is Netflix site, and we're going to go into settings. Now we can close up this so we have more space. Now we're going to scroll up all to where we see this database. Now right here in database, what we're just going to do is to comment this out. We don't need this. This is using the default SQLite that Django uses, but we want to use Postgres because it's better. So now what we're going to do is to say databases equals, we're going to open that, and then we're going to say default. Then we're going to open that. Now we're going to have a dictionary, and we're going to say engine. Now if you could see, the engine that was being used there was SQLite 3, but now we're going to change that engine to Django DB. So we're going to say Django .db .backend .postgres QL underscore psycopg. So it's PSYCOPG 2. Now this is how we specify the engine being used. Now before we move forward, I have to say you have to have two things installed before you can actually use or connect Postgres to your Django application in general. So I'm going to open up this terminal and show you what you need. Let me just create a new terminal. And you need to have something called Psycop2 installed. So you're going to say pip3 install Psycop2. Now, sometimes when you try to install this, it does pop up an error. If you try to install it and it gives you an error, just install Psycop2 binary. Now, any one of these two will work as long as you have any one of them installed. Now, I already have both of them installed, to be honest, so I don't really need to install that. Now, the second thing you need to install is Pillow. So Pillow is going to allow us to be able to use like images, videos, and all of that in this our database. So just make sure you have those two things installed. Once you have them installed, you can move forward with what we are doing. So I'm going to close this. And now the next thing is to specify the name of that database. We're going to leave it blank for now. Come back to it. And the next one will be the user. Again, we're going to leave it blank. We'll come back to it. And let's just make sure we're having the right thing. This should be a comma, not a semicolon. This is Python, not JavaScript. And password blank again, and host blank again, and port. I mean, we don't really need to leave the port blank. We already know what the port is going to be. So most of the time the port is 5432. Now let's go and get all of this information. So we start from the name. So the name right here, as you can see, is database name. We're just going to copy that. This is it, database name. And then we're going to come in here and paste this. And then the user, so the user right here is just this, which is flow user. We're going to copy that, and then we're going to paste it in user, which is what we want. And then the next thing is password. This is the password. We're just going to copy the password, and then we're going to basically paste that password. And then the last thing is the host. So the host right here, this is the host we want. And then we're just going to copy that and paste that host in here. Now this is basically all you need to connect this your database, this Postgres database, to this application right here. So we've done that successfully. We can now save this file and close it. So we've successfully connected this database to our application. Now the next thing we want to do is to now migrate everything from this our application into the database. So remember when we were creating this database right here. So if I come back, remember when we were running this project and it says you have 18 unapplied migrations. So this is because Django automatically gives us some database tables like admin, authentication, sessions, just so we don't have to do all this manually. But it expects us to migrate all of that into whatever database we're going to be using. The reason why I didn't migrate it earlier was because automatically or initially as default, Django uses SQLite, and that is why if I had migrated it, we're migrating it to SQLite. But now that we've connected the actual database we want to use, let's migrate all of that right now. So to do that, I'm just going to say python 3 manage.py. We could say make migrations first, although there's really nothing to change. So it's going to say nothing detected. So no changes detected. And now we're just going to say python 3 manage.py migrate. Now this is going to migrate that into our Postgres database. Let me just make this a little bit bigger. As you can see that it's being migrated. It's just going to take a few seconds because this is the first time. So it says auth migrated, okay, admin, okay. So the 3 admins have been migrated, okay. And so auth for the permission, the email, username, everything is being migrated, and let's just give it a second. Now sessions is starting to migrate. That is done, and it should be done any second from now. So let's give it a moment. Done. So as you can see, everything has been migrated successfully. Now this database that we created is connected to our project. So now we can move forward with other aspects of this project. But how do we even know that this database is connected? So we can verify this by doing two things. The first thing we can do is to create a new data and then check in the database that when we created the data is actually showing as a table. So we can do that. But how do we even see the database that has been created? So we can either open up pgadmin and then connect this database right here to pgadmin, or we can just use the Django admin panel. So Django gives us a default admin panel that just allows us to see all our tables and all our values. We can basically use that for this. So what we're going to do is to quickly, I'm going to show you how to use that. So right here, I'm just going to create a new private tab. I'm going to say file, new private window, and I'm going to run my project on that window right here. So okay, it says log out. No, this is not what we want. We want to run /admin. So this is the admin panel right here. This is what Django gives us. And once we log into this admin panel, we will be able to see all the data and all the database tables and everything in our application. But how can we get the credentials to log in here? So this is the admin credential. Not anybody can just log in. We have to create these credentials right here in our terminal, and then the credentials that were generated is what we're going to use to log into the admin panel. Now I'm just going to scroll up, bring this up. Now to create that, what we just need to do is to say python3 manage.py create super user. That is going to do that for us. And now we can just say admin as the, we're going to say admin as the username. We're going to leave the email blank, and then we're going to give it a password. And it says the password is too similar and too short. I'm just going to bypass that by saying Y. And that has been created successfully. I can close this. Now I can come here, hit refresh, and then I can use those details I just created to log in. So let's just make sure we're inputting the right thing and click on login. Now once we click on login, it should log us into the application. Good. So as you can see, it says welcome admin because we just created our admin details. Now if you come into users, you're going to see that we actually have a table. So these are two tables that were migrated into the Postgres database. Now this is basically how we are viewing the data in that Postgres database. So we have a table named users, and on here we have one data, which is one user, which is the admin that we just created. So when we actually take care of authentication, logging in and signing up on our website, you're going to see how when a user signs up, all the details are going to be stored right here. Now we are going to take care of user authentication on this website. So we're going to allow a user to sign up and log into the website. This is actually very straightforward, so I'm just going to walk you through all the steps to just follow along. And the first thing we want to do is to take care of the sign up page. So when a user wants to sign up to our website, we want them to be able to go to the sign up link, and we want this HTML page right here to be rendered. So let's do that. So right here in views, we already have the sign up page, and when they go to /signup, signup.html is rendered. So now what we need to do is to create a form here. So if I come down here, as you can see, we have this form. It collects email address, username, password, repeat password, and it has a button that clicks on get started. So what we're just going to do now is to say action. Now action, I'm going to leave it blank. Now when we leave action blank, this means that when a user clicks on submit, we want this particular, all the details that the user input in here to be sent back to this page. So it's going to be sent back to this sign up page. Then we're going to collect all those details and then submit it to the database. So the first thing I want to do is to come in here. We could quit this for now, and then I'm just going to go into the sign up page. So now this is the sign up page we're talking about. Now let's make sure everything is working fine with it. Now what we just need to do is to say method. So for this method, we're going to use post, and you should always use post whenever you're dealing with sensitive data like passwords, emails, and stuff like that. So that's why we are using post. And whenever you're using a post method in Django, you must add CSRF token. So CSRF underscore token. So CSRF stands for cross-site request forgery. It's kind of like an attack that someone can basically make on your application, but this token just prevents it. That's a summary of what this does. Now, the next thing we need to do is to make sure that this form, all the inputs has names. So this email, we need to give it a name of email. Now, this is kind of like the ID that we're going to be using to get the value that the user inputs in this input tag in our views.py. So if it doesn't have name, there's no way we can collect or refer to this particular input. So let's say a user input the email right here. For us to get the value that the user put in here, we need to refer to the name of that input. That's why it needs to have a name. Now the name for username too, we're just going to leave that as username. And for password, let's just give it password. And for the second password, let's give it a name of password 2. And that is all that we need for the name. Now we can save this now, and when a user comes in here, input all the details and clicks on get started, all of that value is going to be sent right here in. So first of all, it's going to be sent to this sign up page, and since this sign up page is going along with views.signup, it's going to go into views, look for the sign up function, and now we can collect all of those data. Now what we're just going to do, the first thing we're going to do is to say if request. So we need to check the type of request or type of method, that the request method that is being used to access this page. So if I say if request, the method is equals to post, then we're going to do something. And what we're going to do is basically collect all details sent. I'm going to comment this out for now. So we're saying that if the request the method is equals to post, do this, else we just render it normally. So let me explain what this means. So when I come in here and I just go to my website /signup, I'm requesting for this page using a get method. I'm not submitting any form, I'm not submitting nothing. I'm just requesting for this page. Automatically it uses a get method. But if I input some data here and then I click on get started, then all those details is going to be sent back to this page. Then I am requesting for this new page, which is the same page, using a post method. So that's why we're saying if the method used to request for this page is a post method, that means some details are being sent to this page. We want to collect all those details, then we're going to do whatever we want with those details. Else, that means if it's just any other method, which is just a get method, just render the sign up page normally. This is what we're doing right here. Now what we're just going to do is to now collect all of those details. So right here where we have, if we come back in here, let's just bring it closer. We have email, username, password, password 2. So we're going to collect all of that. So say email equals to request dot post. So this is how you collect the value. Square brackets, and then you put the name of that input. So this is the name of that input. So this should be the same as these names right here. Now we're going to do the same thing for the username. So username equals to request dot post, and now we're going to collect the username. We're going to do the exact same thing for both passwords. So password equals to request dot post password, and password 2 is equals to request dot post password 2. Now all the values that the user has input in this input field, the values are now stored in these respective variables. So we can access all those values using these variables. We can do anything we want now. We can print them, we can send it back to the user, we can do anything. But now what we just want to do is to check that all of these values are correct. So the first thing we want to do is to check that these both passwords are equal, because once the reason why we are asking for the password to be written twice is because we want to make sure that the user knows what they are writing and they are writing the right password. So both of these must be the same. So we're going to check if both of this is the same. If that is true, then we're going to check if the email already exists in our database. Then if that is not true, we're going to check if the username already exists. If it bypasses all of those checks, then we're going to create that user and save that user in our database. But before we go forward, we need to import some stuff. So I'm going to come up here and import a few things. The first thing is redirect. So we're going to use this when we want to redirect a user to another URL from our views right here. The next thing is to import user. So I'm going to say from Django. Before we move forward, let me explain what I'm importing. So I said I'm importing user. Basically what I mean is this user table is what I'm importing right here. So we want to be able to access this user database in our code. So for us to access it, it's a built-in model by Django. So we're going to import it from Django. So .contrib.auth.models and import user. And the next thing we're going to import is auth. So auth just allows us to basically authenticate a user, which means log that user into our platform. The next thing we're going to import is messages. So say from Django.contrib, and you're going to see when we use all of this right now. Import messages. So for these messages, let's say, remember when I said we're going to check that if the password is same, if the email exists. Let's say the password is not the same and we want to send back an error to that user saying, yo, your password is incorrect. That's where we use messages. So we use messages to actually send back those responses. And now that's what we need for now. So let's just come back in here and actually do the sign up. So to move forward, what we're now going to do, as I said, we're first going to check if the password is same. So we say if password is equals to password 2. So if they are the same, then we want to continue. But if they are not the same, then we want to send a message. So say messages.info. This is how you send a message back to the HTML page, to the front end. Request. And now we type in the message, password not matching. So what we're just saying is if password is same, then we're going to continue with the other checks. But if it's not the same, we don't even want to continue. We just want to tell them, yo, your password is not the same. And now we're just going to say return redirect sign up. So we're just redirecting them back to this same page. So after telling them the password is not the same, we're sending this back to this sign up page. And then we're coming back to this page basically. Now the next thing we want to do, if the password is same, we then want to check if the email exists. So for us to check if the email exists, we're going to say if user, which is the user model that we imported right here. So we say if user, I'll just follow along, .objects, .filter, email equals email .exists. Now what this means is that it's just checking the database to see if user.objects.filter. So it is filtering all the details, all the values or entry we have in the database, and is filtering with the one where the email is equals to this email. So what that means is that it's going to go into the user database right here. Then it's going to filter with only the users that have an email address that is equals to this email address that was provided by the user. So if that is true, that means we already have this email address registered in our platform. Then we want to send an error that this email is already taken. So now we're just going to say messages.info request email taken. And now, once again, we're just going to redirect back to this page. So this is where we're using redirect again. Sign up. Right? So if this exists, we're going to do this. But what if it doesn't exist? So let's use an else if in this situation. We'll say elif. So The next thing we want to check is if this is not true, then it's going to come and try this second one. So we want to check the same thing. So we're going to filter to see if the username is already taken. So say if user.objects.filter username equals username dot exists, and then we're going to have a colon. So if the username exists, as I said, it's going to do the same thing. It's going to come here, look for the users that have the same username as the value that the user input on the form. If that is true, if there is a user like that, then we already have a username corresponding to this that already exists, and we're going to tell them that the username is also taken. So messages.info request username taken, and we're just going to return redirect sign up. Let's make sure we're having the right syntax. Sign up. So we're redirecting the user back to the sign up page. Now this is good. We already, basically this does all the checks right now. But the next thing we now want to do is, if all of this is successful, if the password is the same, the username doesn't exist, the email doesn't exist, now we want to now sign up this new user and register them on our platform. So we're going to say else. That means all of this were successfully checked. We'll now say user equals user. So we're going to use the actual user that we imported, dot objects dot create user. So create user is the method that we use to actually create a new user. So right here, just going to say create user, and then we're going to create the user by giving it all the details. So we're just going to say username equals to the username that we just created. So we're saying the username in this database right here, username, should be equals to this username that was gotten from this right here. And then we're going to do the same thing for the email. We're going to say email equals email, and then we're going to say password equals, now we could give this anyone, password 1 or password 2, because they are the same. So we're just going to say equals password. Now this is right, this is what we need, and we're just going to come here and say user.save. Now that is saved, the user has been saved successfully on our database. But we could do two things. We could now redirect them to the login page to make them now log in with the details they just created, or we could just log them in directly to our page and take them to the home page. So I think we're just going to do that. Now let me just write a comment. We'll say log user in. We're just going to write that out, and now we're going to say user underscore login equals to auth.authenticate. So now this is when we are using the auth that we imported. Remember I said we're going to use this to actually log the user into our platform. That's what we're doing right now. So we want to authenticate them with their username and password. So username equals username, and then password equals password. So that is what we need. And now we're now going to say auth.login request. Now we want to log this particular user, this user and the password. I will just say user login. And once they are logged in, we want to redirect them to the home page. So return redirect to home page, just like this. Now this should take care of everything. Everything should be working perfectly right now. The next thing we need to do is to just go ahead and test this. I'm going to save this. I'm going to come back in here and hit refresh. So it says you can't connect to the server. Now let's see what's going on. I'm just going to bring this up, go back here. Okay, I think it has solved itself. So let's come back in here and hit refresh again. Good. Now let's just say tommy@gmail.com, and let's give it a username of Tommy. Let's just give it a random password, another random password, making sure they are the same. And let's click on get started. And now let's see what it does. Boom, as you can see, it brings me back to this home page. Now this just basically means that this works successfully. Now if I come back in here and I now hit refresh right here, you're going to see that there's now a new user registered on our database. Good. So tommy@gmail.com, and as you can see right here in staff status, it has an X. Now this is just showing that this user is not allowed to come into the admin platform because it's just a normal user registered on here. That is very good because that is what we need. So this has worked successfully, but we didn't check it well. So we need to check for if the user inputs password that is not correct, or if a user like inputs a name that's already taken or email, what is going to happen. So we're going to come back in here. I'm just going to go back to sign up. For now, normally when a user is logged in, they shouldn't even access the sign up page. You should just redirect them back to the home page, but we're going to take care of that later in this video. For now, let's just stick to this. Now we're just going to come here. For us to do this, so we sent all the messages back to the sign up page, but we didn't actually show them here. So what we need to do now is to come on top of this form right here, and we're just going to create a new div tag. And then I'm going to add a little bit of like styling. I'm going to leave that blank for now. And so what we're just going to say is for, so we're going to look through all the messages. For message in messages, showcase the message, and let's end that for loop. Let's just say h5. Like this. So this is what we need, but let's give you a styling. Let's just make the color red, right? So we could do that here, we could just do that here, anyone is fine. So we're just going to say h5 color red. So this is what we need. This should take care of that. So we're looping through the messages that was sent from here, which is these messages, and let's see if that works. So I'm going to come back in here now, and I'm going to use an email that has been taken. So tommy@gmail.com. I'm going to use a random one, and let's see what it says. As you can see, it says email taken. Good. Let's try for the username. We already have Tommy registered, so let's give this a random email. Get started. Now this should say username taken. As you can see, it says username taken. Now let's give you random email, random username, but different passwords. So let's just say UUII, some random thing, and then let's just give this way different passwords, and let's see. And as you can see, it says password not matching. So we have successfully implemented the sign up functionality into our platform. The next thing we want to do is to make a user log into our platform when they go to the login page. Now the next thing we want to do is to take care of the login page. So this is quite easier compared to the sign up page. What we just need to do is to come here, and we're going to do something similar to what we did in the sign up. So right here in the login.html, we're just going to do something similar. So we're just going to create, we'll come right here under form. So we're just going to create a form and say action, and we're going to say blank, and then we're going to give it a method of post, and then we're going to say CSRF token because we're using a post method, and we're going to give it a name also. So name, username, and name, password. Now this is what we need, and we're going to come back in views, and right here we're just going to say if request the method is equals to post, then we're going to say username equals to request dot post username, and password is equals to request the post password. Now we're just going to do the same thing. What we're just going to say is user. So now we're just going to log them in directly, equals to of the authenticate, and then we're going to authenticate them using the username equals username and password equals password, just like that. And what we're going to do, we have to check if this user actually exists in our database, because if they don't exist, then we can't actually log them in. So to check, we're going to say if user is not none. Now if the user is not none, that means the user is actually present in the database. Then we'll say auth.login request user, and then we say return redirect to the home page. Now this is basically what we need. But else, if the user is none, then we want to send a message, messages.info, and we're going to say request credentials invalid. And now we're just going to say redirect them back to this login page. So this is basically what we need. So if request the method is post, we're going to do all of this. But if it's not post, then we'll say else, just return this normally. And now let's just test this out. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to go to /login. And we're just going to say, let's give you a random details that is not in the database. So right now, okay, so it says this multi. So what we just need to do is to come here where we have password. So the first thing is, it says there is, if we come in here on line 12, which is this. So I think it's saying that whenever you have this, it means you are basically using a value before assigning it. So what you need to do is to come in here, and then we're just going to say, okay, so what this is, because we're saying if request the method is post, do this, but if it's not, what we can just do is to remove this like this, and then just do this. Let's try this out again. So login. Now let's see if I go back and we do tell me. So it still gives us that same error. Now most of the time, as I said, this is because we're assigning something before we actually use it. So let's just make sure that everything is correct. So username equals username, then password is equals to password. So request a post password, and then we have this. So what we're just going to do to make this easier is to, we could just copy and paste what we did here and just tweak up some stuff. But first, let's make sure, because everything should be correct. So if request the method is post, and username equals request the post, password equals that, and then user equals password, user is not none of the login, then redirect, else messages.info, credentials invalid, login. So the next thing we want to do first is to make sure that we have the styling for the messages right here. So right here where we have this form, we're just going to paste in this messages that we did, and then we're going to come back in here to see why this is not working. Once again, let's save this. It says it's not correct, so let's see what's going on. It's running again, so let's refresh and let's try to log in, and let's see what it gives us. So it still gives us this error. So the reason why we might be getting this error is maybe because there's no value here. So let's come into login and make sure everything is correct. So this is where the problem is, where this should be password. Now let's try this out again. This should work successfully now. Let's go back, hit enter, and now let me use a random credential, and it should give us credentials invalid. Good. But now when I do tell me and then I log in with this particular one, it should log me in and redirect me back to the home page. Good. Everything is working successfully. Now once the user is logged in, we want to show them that they are logged in. So right here we want to have something that says like welcome here or something like that, like welcome back user, and it's going to say their username. So we want to have something like that, and we're just going to do that right now. So what we just need to do is to come up here where we have, so I'm going to come back to the code, and then we're going to scroll down to, so if we come here, we're going to see that we have about where we have login, logout. So that's going to be somewhere here, and we're just going to create a new one. So here we're going to say welcome, and then we're just going to show them their username. We're going to say user the username, and then it's just going to be hashtag like this. So this is what we need. If I save this and now I come back in here, you're going to see that it says welcome Tommy, and now we have logout. This is what we want. This is working perfectly. Now the next thing that we want to do is to just go straight into creating databases. So I'm going to open up models. I'm going to close this, and I'm going to come into core and open up models.py. So this models.py is where we create our Django database. It basically allows us to create whatever database we want. And for this, we're going to have to create two databases. So the first one we're going to create is the database where we store the movies of that are going to be in the website. So we're just going to do that right now. So the first thing we need is to create a new class. So we're going to say class movie models.model and genre choices, and we're just going to leave this blank for now. Now the next thing is to actually take care of all the details. So we want to have a title. So we say models.character field. Let's say max length for title should be like 225 or 255, and we're going to have a description, and you're just going to say models.text field, and we're going to have a release date, so the date when this movie was released. So we'll say models.date field. We're going to have a genre, so this is going to be a character field, but it's going to be chosen from these genre choices. I'm going to show you what I mean. So character field, and we're going to have max length of like 100, and then choices. So the choices is going to be genre choices. And now we're going to come into genre choices, and then we're going to actually have some choice. So say action is the first one we want to have. The actual value will be action, and then we want comedy, and then the actual value will be comedy. And we're going to do the same for drama. We have drama, and for the rest I'm just gonna put the rest in like this, and this is all we want. So we have horror, romance, science fiction, and fantasy. Now we have that done for the genre choices, and we're just gonna come for the length. So we'll say length. So this is the length of the movie. For these, let's use a positive integer field, not just a normal integer field, because if you use a normal integer field, then it could be negative, but a movie or time cannot be negative. So we'll say positive integer field. So we use that like that, and then we're going to have an image cover. Say image card. So this is like the card right here. This is the card of the movie, but this big one is the cover of the movie. So we're going to have two images. So image card, say models dot image field, and then we'll say upload to. So this is the folder where all the images will be uploaded to, and we will just say movie images slash. Something like this is what we need. And then we're going to do the same for image cover. So we just change this to image cover, and then models or image field, we also want to upload it to movie images, same folder. And now we're going to have the actual movie video. So this is going to be a file field, models.file field, and then we're going to upload this to movie videos. So we're going to say movie underscore videos slash. The last thing we're going to do is to kind of like count the movie views. So we just want to know how many views a movie gets. We might use this, we might not use this. Let's just add this for now. So models.integer field is just going to be a basic integer field, and as default it should be 0. So when a new movie is added, as default the views should be 0. Then we'll take care of that later. Now the next thing we want to do is to add like a unique ID. We don't want to use the default Django ID. Django just uses normal integers. We want to have a unique ID. So say uu underscore ID equals to models.uuid field, and then let's give it default, and we're going to use the uuid library. So we're going to say import uuid. So default equals uuid.uuid4, like this. And then now we're going to save this. This is what we need. And the last thing we're going to do is to say def underscore str, and then self return self.title. This is what we want. So this is working now, but there's one more thing we need before we move forward with migrating this to our database. So whenever you make a change to models file, you need to make migrations and migrate it. So this is just a file right now, but we need to kind of like push all these changes to the actual database. But before we do that, there's something we haven't set up. So we are dealing with images and videos and files here, but we haven't actually set up the folder where it stores. So right here we say upload to movie images. But where does that movie images folder lie? So just the way we set up static files right here, we also need to set up something called media. I'm going to create a new file, a new folder called media. So this media is just saying that this is where anything containing a media file is going to be stored. So for us to do this now, we need to go back to the settings again, and then we need to add something there. So I'm going to come into project file, open up settings. Now I'm going to scroll all the way to the bottom, and right here I'm just going to say media underscore URL equals to /media/. So this is just saying the media URL should be /media, and then the next one is media root. The media root is going to be os.path.join base directory media. So once again, what we're just saying is that the path to this media file is going to be in the root directory /media. So if I open that up, you're going to see root directory. So right here is the root directory /media. So we save that. Now the last thing we need to do containing this media is to come into the project folder once again and open up URLs. Now the reason why we're doing this is because we need to add this media URL to the URL patterns right here of this particular project. So what we just need to do is to come here, and then we're just going to import two things. So we're going to say from django.conf import settings, And the next thing we're going to import is static. So from django.conf.urls.static, then import static. Now once we have this imported, we're now going to say URL patterns equals to URL patterns plus static settings dot media underscore URL, have a comma, so we can say, let's just close this up and let's remove this. So we'll say document underscore root is equals to settings dot media root. So this is what we need to make sure that that works, and everything should be working perfectly fine now. So now we can come back to models, and now we can actually migrate this model and see the change in our platform. So we're going to come here and we're going to say python 3 manage.py make migrations. It's going to show you the change that is going to be made to your database. So it says no change detected. Now this is just because we are making all this change in our models, but if we come in here to our settings right here, we didn't add this core as part of an app under this project. So we know that we created this app under this project, but Django doesn't know that. So we need to come into installed apps and we just need to add this app named core. So once we add that, now Django knows that anything dealing with this app is part of this project, and that also goes for the database. So now let's try to run that again, and now you should see the change that is going to be made to the database. As you can see, it says we're going to create a new model named movie. Now let's migrate. So let's run that migration. Python 3 manage.py migrate. Now let's see, that should migrate for us. Yes, applying core.0001 initial. Good, that has been done. But the thing is, if we come back into this admin panel and I go to home, I'm not going to see that database right here. So as you can see here, I don't see that movie database right here. This is because we have a file named admin.py. If you come here, you're going to see we have admin.py, and that file is basically where we can register what database we want to be shown here. So right here now, we're going to import. So we're going to say from the models, import movie. So now we want this movie database to show there. To do this, we're going to say admin.site.register movie. Let's make sure everything is being shown. Done. Now if I come in here and I now hit refresh, you're now going to see that under the core app, I now have a new movie database table. And if I click on it, I'm not going to have any details for now, but I can add a movie from here like this, and you're going to see that I'm able to add a movie. So automatically it generates a unique ID, but then I can add a title, description, the release date, genre. I can choose the image card, videos, and everything that I need. I'm just going to cancel. So this is good. I'm just going to go back to home right here. And then now what we just want to do is to just going to remove this, is to make sure that once we come in here, this movie is created successfully. As you can see, everything is done, and we just want to make sure that there's no errors with all of the fields. So UUID is a UUID field. This is a character field, text field, date field, character field, integer, image, file, and integer. So that has been created successfully. Now what I'm going to do is to take care of how the page looks. So right now nothing really works. None of all these are just dummy values and dummy buttons. Now I want, first of all, a user needs to be able to log out. I want a user to be able to search, and all of this should actually work. So this HTML file that we already created is linked to a static file right here, which is basically style.css, and we have all the styling here for the film cards, the modal content, the modal, and everything we need. So what we're just going to do now is I'm just going to basically implement. So if I come up here, I'm going to close this up, And right here, I'm just going to paste in some code and explain what I'm doing. So I want to make some changes right here. So where we have this nav, I'm going to just change this nav. So I'm going to just come in here and leave some spacing, then paste all of this. So now this nav right here is basically the same thing that was there, but I just added a drop down for the all the genres, and I added home. So once a user clicks on home, they go to the home page, and right here, which is my list. So when a user adds a list to their movie list, I want them to be able to click on it and go see their list. Now the next thing that we're gonna do is right here, I'm gonna basically change this particular input button. So this is what I'm gonna do right now. So right here where we have this input, it's the same form, but I am just adding this action search and this method post. So we're going to take care of all of this. Right here, you can see when the user clicks on action, it goes to genre/action. We've not yet created a genre URL. We're going to do that. And right here, once the user tries to search, there is a form that is sending all these details to the search page. We have also not created a URL named search, but we're going to take care of that. So let's save this and then let's come in here and hit refresh. And then when we come in here and we click on genre, so this should drop down. So there is something wrong there. We're going to take care of that too. So don't worry about that. And now what we just need to do is I'm going to come into right here. So for this styling, so we have styles.css. So I wrote a style for the genre. That is why it's not dropping down. Note that all of this code is going to be in my GitHub in the description below. So don't worry about if you might not understand like this CSS that we're going to write, because we're not really focusing on the front end in this tutorial. But so what we're going to do is I'm going to paste in the code for the drop down, and basically, so I'm just going to come here and I'm just going to paste in this code. So this is just the code that takes care of the drop down menu. So once we click on drop down, we want everything to be done. So this is the CSS code, and I'm just going to quit that. And now once I come here and hit refresh, you're going to see that once I click on drop down, this should drop down. Okay, so that doesn't drop down. And I'm just going to come back in here, open up style.css. So first of all, we need to make sure that index.html is linked to style.css. Yes, it is linked to style.css. So right here, everything should be working. Not sure why it's not working. So let's just quickly check. So we have the theme cards, we have the card over, we have the modal content, and then we have the display. Okay, so we are going to take care of that later. Let's just keep going with this. And now what we can just do is, since we already have all of this done right here, and now the user can search and all of that, the next thing we can do is that we want a user to be able to actually view movies, then so they can watch those movies, add it to their list and stuff like that. So let's just go ahead and do that. So the first thing we want to do is actually add a few movies. So I'm going to come into my database right here, and I'm going to click on add, and now it's going to tell me to add a new movie. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add one named A Fall from Grace. Let me just say the best movie. Release day, I could just say today. And genre, we could say drama. And let's just say, so this is going to be in minutes. So let's say like 60 minutes. Now I have a folder right here where I have a few movies that I created. And what I'm going to do is I'm first going to click on the video. And so this video clip. So I just have like this 15 seconds video clip that is going to stand as the actual video. But in a real scenario, of course, you're going to have the actual 1 hour video. And for image card, under A Fall from Grace, I'm going to click on the card. And for the cover, I'm going to click on the poster. So this is what I need. And the movie views is going to be 0 automatically. And I'm going to save and add another. And now the other one I'm going to add is, so let's wait for this to save. and then we're going to add another film. So let me say the night agent. A good movie. And for release day, we can say today. Genre, we can say something like action, and let's just say this is also 60 minutes. And for the image card, we're gonna go to movie files, and then in here we're gonna look for where we have the night agent, and then we're just gonna click on the card. And then for the cover, we're gonna click on the poster. And then for video, now we're gonna go back a little bit, so movie files, and then we're gonna click on movie clips, and let's just save. So those two is enough for now. I'm just gonna click on save. Good. Now this is what has been saved, and I'm just gonna come back in here. If I hit refresh, nothing is gonna show, but what I want to do is that I don't want all of this dummy data to show and all of this. I want it to get all of these movies from the database. So to do that, we're gonna come in here, and we're actually gonna go into the views file. And in this views file, what we're gonna do is that so we're gonna come here under the home page. So I'm just gonna close this a little bit. Now under this home page, first of all, we need to import that model. So we're gonna say from the models, we're gonna import movie. So we need to kind of import that database into this file so we can use it. Now, what we can now do is to get a list of all of the movies that we have. And then when we get a list of all of the movies, we can pass it to the front end. So let's just do that right now. So we're just going to say movies equals movie.objects.all. And then what we can just say is copy, and we're going to create something like a context. So a new dictionary. We're going to say movies is movies. Let's just add a comma, and now we're going to send context to the front end so we can access these movies. Now that is basically all we need. And what I'm now going to do is to come into index.html. Now right here in index.html, I can now loop through these movies and then show the details. So I'm going to show you what I mean. So right here in index.html, we're going to scroll down all the way to where we have the list of movies. So we have the list of all of these movies. As you can see, we have all of this right here. So this is okay. Good. Yes. So what we just need to do is to get just one. I'm going to remove all of this. So we just need one of this, and then we're going to loop through it. So right here, what I'm just going to do is to say for movie in movies and for. So we have two movie in the movies database. If we come here now, we should just see two of the same thing. So we have two, but the only difference now is that we are not getting dynamic data. This is just static data that we input in here. What we now want to do is that right here where we have this image URL, what we want to do is to remove this right here. So just make sure we're removing the right thing. Okay, let's go back again. Remove, get rid of that. And then we're just going to get rid of all of this. And then right here, what we're just going to do is to get, so that movie, for movie in movies, we're going to get that movie dot image card underscore card dot URL. So this is how we get the URL of that particular movie image. So now we can come back in here and hit refresh. Now it should give us two different images, a fall from grace and the night agent. So as you can see, that works. Now if I come back in here and then I create a new movie, and if I create a new movie, and let's just look for a new movie, let's come here, image card, let's just say something like Homeland, and then let's click on this card, and then let's click on the same cover, and then for video let's go back and click on movie clips. So let me just come here and say Homeland, good one, release date today, genre drama, and then length I could say 60, movies, and I could just say save. And now once we say save, that is going to take a few seconds to save, and now we can just go back here, and once I hit refresh, you're going to see that one comes up here. So once we add anything to our backend right here in the panel, it automatically shows here as a new movie added. So this is good. This is actually what we want, and we're just going to leave this blank for now. We're going to take care of this later. So this is what we want. We want to change this from my list to popular on Netflix. So that shouldn't be my list. So we just say, let's just copy this, and we'll say popular on Netflix. We just save that and hit refresh to see that that changes. And now what we're just going to do is that, as you can see, once we click on this, all of it gives us the same details. So we want this to have, so it says movie title, it says detailed information, the year, and all of that. So we want all of these to just be this specific movie. So if I click on this movie, I want to see the card and details of this movie, and I want to be able to play that movie. Let's go ahead and do that. Now, gonna come back in here. What we need to do is, after film card, let me just open this like this so you see this, and right here where we have the styling also, that will take care of itself. And for this div tag, let's just bring that here. Now what we're going to do is we're going to use JavaScript. So right here we have a modal, right? As you can see, we have this modal that says movie information, yeah, all of that. So we're going to use JavaScript to trigger this. We're going to have an onClick function. So as you can see, it says onClick show modal. So once we click on a specific image, a specific movie card, we want to get the details of that specific movie and then show that details here. Even if we are still using the same modal, but we want the details to be dynamic every time any one of this is clicked. Now let's do that. For us to do this, we're going to have to pass certain information, and I'm going to show you that right now. So I'm just going to paste something in, and I'm going to explain what it does. So right here where we have that, so right here is where I'm going to paste it in. I'm going to paste a few data, and I'm going to explain why I'm pasting that. So we're just going to do paste. So as you can see, let me just give you a space so you can see the difference. Now what I'm doing is, when a user clicks on this, we have an onClick function, and the name of the function is show modal. But then I want to send all these details alongside when they click on that. So I'm naming this data title, and the value is movie.title, data description, movie.description. So I'm basically giving it everything we need, and I'm also giving it like a video URL where we can actually watch that video. We're also going to take care of this where we create a URL where a user can watch the movie. So this is all that I'm giving it, and this is how we can pass data from this to the JavaScript file or to the JavaScript. So when we come down here now, right here in show modal, normally this just has like a basic show modal, it just shows this. So this is what we're going to use for now, but I'm going to remove all of this and I'm going to paste something else in here. So for this show modal, I'm going to use a different show modal, and I'm going to show you why. So I'm just going to paste in the show modal function. So right here where we have this is the new show modal function. So this is what we are doing. Now this is the function, but then we are getting all the details sent. So the title, description, as you can see, is data title, data description. So we are using element.getAttribute to get all of these details. If I come back in here, you're going to see all of the details. So data title, data description, they are attributes. So we are getting all of those details and storing it in a variable. Now that we have all of those details, what we can now do is update the modal content with the movie details. So this modal content that we have right here, instead of just having movie title, length that has a static data, we're going to update it with all of these particular details, and then we're going to show the modal. So let's save this, and now let's test it out. So if I hit refresh, once I click on this, so as you can see, it doesn't work right now. So let's go back. Now the problem is because when we come up here where we have, if I come here where we have show modal, we didn't input this. So we need to add this just to make sure that we are sending this particular div tag with all the attributes to this function. Now once we come back and then we hit refresh, and then we click on one, you can see it pops up with that particular one. And if I click on the night agent, it pops up with details of the night agent, the year, the description, the name, the movie poster, and same for Homeland. So this works successfully. So now that all of this works, as you can see, I click on one, everything works. The next thing I want to do is to create a page where I can watch these movies. So once I click on play, I want it to take me to a page where I can actually view and watch these movies. Now let's just do that. So what I'm going to do now is that I'm going to come back in here and I'm going to go into my urls.py. So I'm going to look for that. I need to delete this and come to urls.py. So right here in urls.py, I'm going to create a dynamic URL. And I'm going to explain to you what that is. So a dynamic URL is kind of like a URL that changes. So let me first write it out and I'm going to explain. So I'm going to do path. I'm going to say movie / string colon pk close then slash, and I'm just going to name this views dot movie, and this will be name equals movie. Now what I'm just doing now is that I am writing a new movie right here, and this is a new movie URL, and what it does is that when a user goes to slash movie slash a particular ID, based on that ID is going to play a movie. So this is a dynamic URL, as I said. So this is how it's going to look like. So once I click on play right here, it's going to take me to slash movie, something like this, slash movie slash the ID of that film. So let's say the ID is this. So because it recognizes that ID, then it's going to play and show me all the details of that particular film. When I do the same for here, once I click on play, I want it to be a new link. So it's going to be website slash movie but slash an ID of that film. So this string is kind of what identifies that ID. So the ID is a string, but we are giving it a name of pk. Kind of the variable name is pk and the data type is a string. Now that we can save this, what we just want to do is to come back into views, and then here in views we can now get started. So now we're just going to create a new view, and we're going to name this view, we're going to name it movies. So I'm just going to come here, we can do that under here. We're going to say def movies. So one thing before we even let's finish this, I'm going to say pass. So one thing before we move forward, before a user can access this home page, I want the user to be logged in. For us to do this, we're going to import something. So we're going to say from django.contrib.auth.decorators import login required. Now this login required will allow us to restrict a view to only users that are logged in. So the user must be logged in before a user can actually view that page or access that page. Now let's add it here. So we say at login required, then we have to specify the login URL. So if the user is not logged in, we want the user to be redirected to the login page like this. So we're going to do the same also for movie. So we don't want just any user to watch a movie, we want only logged in users. So we don't need for this. Good. Now what we can just do is in here for these movies, because we have pk that is being passed in here, we can basically get that particular movie and then display it. So what I'm going to do is we're going to collect pk from the URLs, which was what we collected here, pk, and then we're going to go back here, and now pk is basically the movie ID, so we can just say something like movie UUID equals pk. So now once we get the movie ID, we can now get that details of that particular movie. So we're going to say movie, so say movie underscore details equals movie dot objects, but now we're going to say dot get. So now that we say dot get, what we're just saying is get that particular ID. So I'm going to say dot object dot get the one in which the UUID is equals to UI movie ID. ID is equals to, so just so you know what I'm looking at, so this UUID is basically this. So I'm looking for the one in which this UUID is equals to pk, which is also movie UUID. So once we get the details of that particular data, now what we can now do is to just say context, create a new dictionary, and then we can say movie detail, give it movie detail, and now right here we can return render request movie.html context. Now what we can do is to make sure that we actually have an HTML page. So let's come in here. Right here we have movie.html, which is good. Now the next thing we want to do is to kind of like test this out. So now let's say we have, let's go in here and then let's click on homeland. So it says it can't connect. Let's see why it can't connect. Come back in here. It says code of view has no, so now let's views as no movie. So this is should be movie. That should work now. Let's give it a second. Good. We come back in here, and once we hit refresh on this, it should open up that particular page for us. And once that page is open, we're going to get the ID. Good. So now we've gotten the ID. What we can now do is to say this slash movie, and then we can paste in that ID, and then it should take us to a movie page to kind of show us a movie. So let's see what it does. So as you can see, it takes us to this page. Right now it's just demo data. It says movie title, back to movies, you know, it says all of this. There's nothing really playing, it's just there, and about movie. Now what we want to do is we're going to get the details of this particular movie that has this ID. So now to do this, we're going to come back in here, and then we're going to open up movie.html. So right here we're just going to go into templates, and we're going to open up movie.html. So in movie.html, now what we just need to do is to basically come here. We're just going to close this right here, close this, and then for movie.html, what we're just going to do is to say we're going to come here, and we're going to say we're going to look for the movie title. So for the movie title, we're just going to say movie underscore details dot title. That's going to show the movie title. And back to movies, when the user tries to go back to movies, we're just going to take them back to the home page. And then for part to the movie, so now what we're going to do is let's paste this. We're going to say movie details underscore details dot video dot URL. Now we're going to say movie details dot video dot URL. So we're basically in that movie dot video dot URL. So it's going to get the URL of that video and play it. Now if the browser doesn't support video, then we're just going to tell them your browser does not support video type. But if it does, it's just going to show the movie. Now the next thing is just to show about the movie. So right here where we have about the movie, we're just going to say, I'm just going to do this like this, and I'm going to say movie details dot description, save, and that is the main thing that we need. And we can just come back in here now and hit refresh just to see what this does. So I'm just going to mute it. Now as you can see, as I said earlier, the video I uploaded was just a quick 15 seconds video, but now as you can see, we have homeland, the name. We can go back to the home page and we can watch a movie, and we can just see about this movie. So as you can see, this is basically the movie right here. We can skip, we can do whatever. So this is just the demo. So this is just an image from a free stock image website that I took, and I'm just using it to demo how you can actually do this. So this works, but the thing we want to do is that we want to, let's go back to the home page by just clicking on this. Once we click on this, we want that when we click on play, we want it to take us to the movie page for this particular movie. Now let's do that. We're going to come back in here, and now we're going to go back to index.html, and what we're just going to do is that right here where we add the data, so right here, so we're going to have to pass data video URL. So once we pass this data video URL right here, as you can see, we said /movie/movie.uuid. Remember when we pasted this in and I said I was going to explain? So that is what this does. So now we basically have the movie URL that we need, /movie/movie_id, which is what is going to use to access it. We have that, and right here in the JavaScript, you're going to see that it updates once it gets that data video URL. So not this one. So once we have the movie URL, it should be, let's get this. Yeah, this, the data video URL is basically the movie URL. We are updating it right here with this that has an A tag. So we're updating it with the modal content that has an A tag, and we're updating the actual link to data video URL. If we come into modal content, let's go into modal content. So we have this modal content. Let's look for the A tag. So the A tag right here is this. Now is replacing this with the URL that we specified in here, which is this /movie/id. Now if we come back here, this movie.html is not what is going to be shown. It's going to replace it with it, and that is going to be triggered once this button, which is play, is clicked. Now if I come back in here, this should be working already. Once I click on play, it should take me to that page. As you can see, it says a fall from grace, and then it says the description. If I go back and let's say I click on homeland this time around and I click on play, now you're going to see that it says homeland. It gives me the video that I uploaded and it says good one. So this is working perfectly fine. Now we want a user to be able to add a movie to their list. So what we're going to do now is that we're going to come into models.py, and right here in models.py, let's just open up this. I'll come to models.py. So right here in models.py, we're going to have to create a new model, and we're just going to name this model. Let's come down here. We're going to name this model movie list. We're going to say class movie list models.model, and now this is going to have two foreign keys actually. So we're going to have one for the user, so the owner of this list. So we're going to say owner user, and we're just going to say models.foreign key, and now we're going to say we need to import something. I'm going to scroll up right now and I'm going to import settings. So we need to import settings because we're trying to use the user model as a foreign key. So we need to import that from settings, django.conf import settings. Now what we're going to do is when we scroll down here, we're going to have two models, one for the user and one for the movie. So what this is basically like, it's just like a model that connects two different models together. So I'm going to say settings dot auth user model, and since it's a foreign key, we say on delete models.cascade. This, and now we can now have another foreign key for the movie. So it's going to link to a movie model or movie object. Say models.foreign key, and we're gonna link it to this movie right here, this one. So we can say that, and then once again we'll say on delete cascade. That should be models.cascade. Now, once again, once we make any change to models.py, the routine is that we run make migrations and migrate. So let's run that. I'm going to come here and then we're just going to say python3 manage.py make migrations. It's going to show you that you're trying to create a new model named movie list, and now we're just going to migrate that change. So we're migrating it now, and it should be done in a second. So let's give it a second and see. Done. So now it is done. The next thing we want to do is to come into admin, and we want to register that model in our admin panel. So we're going to say movie list, and now we can just say copy paste. And if I come back in here in our admin panel and go to home, under core, you're going to see that I now have movie list. Good. So now that we have a database table that can store the lists of a user's movies, what we can now do is to come into, so we're going to come into views. But before we even come into views, we're going to come into URLs, and we're going to create two different URLs. So right here in URLs, let's scroll. We're going to create two new URLs, and this is going to be a URL to view the list and a URL to add a list. So I'm just going to say path, and from path we're just going to say this, and then we're going to say my list. So this is just a URL that's going to show a user a list of all their movies that they have saved, and we're going to say views dot my underscore list, and we're going to give it a name of my list. So now that works. We're going to add our comma, and the next thing is to now create add to list. So this is kind of like a URL that is going to be adding a particular movie to a user's list. So you're going to see what we're going to do. So say views dot add underscore to underscore list, and then name equals add to list. It's going to add a comma. So this is done right now. And actually, one more thing, we didn't add the logout, so I'm just going to copy and paste this and just say logout. We also need a logout functionality, so a user can be logged out. I'm just going to paste all of this. Now all of this is done. Before we move forward with adding to list, let's just take care of the logout. That is very, very easy. I'm just going to come into views, and in views I'm going to scroll all the way to the bottom, and right here I'm just going to create a new logout. So I'll say def logout, and what I'm just going to do is to say request, and now I'm just going to say auth.logout request, and then once the user has been logged out, I'm going to say return redirect back to the login page. So if a user has been logged out, we want to redirect them to login. This also, we want it to be at login required. So we don't want the user to try to log out when they are not even logged in. So if a user tries to access the logout page without being logged in, we'll first redirect them to the login page before bringing them back to logout. So now this is done, and then let's quickly test this logout and see. So we're going to come back here, hit refresh. So that doesn't work, and I am pretty sure I know why, because we haven't created the views. So we haven't created views for my list and add to list. So what we're just going to do is I'm going to close this up, and right here what I'm just going to do is to say def, I'm going to create my list. I'm going to take a request, and I'm going to pass for now. I'm going to say def, and I'm going to create add to list. I'm going to take a request, and once again we're going to pass for now. I'm going to save that, and now we can come back here and hit refresh. Now we have views for them. Now if I click on logout, you're going to see, so right now nothing happens, and I'm pretty sure I know why. So I'm going to come back in here, and I'm going to go into index.html. I'm going to go up to the way where we see logout. So right here we want it to go to /logout. So if we come back in here now and hit refresh, and then we click on logout, you see that it's going to log us out and bring us back to the login page. Now let's try to go to the home page without being logged in. If I try to come here without being logged in, you see it redirects me back to the login page. So what I'm just going to do now is to log in back, and now it's going to take me to the home page. Let's see that, and that should take only a second. Good. Welcome to me back in the login page. Now the next thing is to just continue with what we were doing. So now we have created this add to list page. So what we want to do now is that once a user clicks on one of these and then clicks on add to list, we want to send the user that is currently logged in, and then we want to send the name of the movie or ID of the movie to this page, and then this page will add that list to this movie list database. Now let's go ahead and then let's do that. So for this, we're going to use JavaScript, and I'm going to explain why we're using JavaScript. Specifically, we're going to use Ajax, and once again I'm going to explain why. Now this is because if we come back in here, once a user clicks on add to list, we don't want this to go to another page, so we just want it to kind of add it to list and then show the user right here that this movie has been added to list. That is what we want to happen. We don't want it to add to list and then refresh the page, because that's not a good it's not really a good UX. So what we're going to do is we're going to use Ajax to make sure that once a user clicks on this button, this movie is going to be added to their list and saved in the database without this page having to refresh. Nothing is going to change. It's just going to see a message right here saying added to list. Now let's do that. The first thing is that we want to we're going to come back here, and then we're going to come into index.html. So right here in index, we're actually going to have like a basic, so I'm going to come here, and then we're going to have like a basic script tag. So I'm going to show you why we have the script tag, and you're going to see that. So right here under, I'm going to scroll all the way to the bottom. So right here under all of this, what we need to do is to create a new function. And you're going to see why we're creating this function. So this function is going to be called add item to list. So let's say function add item to list. I'm going to open and close this function. So let's leave this blank for now, and then we're going to come back to this. Now, before we can even do this, we need to make sure that in the modal right here, where we have the add to list button, we need to set like an event listener. So once a user clicks on that button, so let's make sure we're in the right button. So that is this button. So once the user clicks on this button that says add to list, we want this function to be triggered. So this function right here that we're creating, we want it to be triggered. So let's copy the name of that function, and then let's go back right here to that modal where we see add to list. So what we're just going to do is to give it an ID so we can access this function. So we're going to say ID, and we're going to say add to list button, and then we're going to say on click. So that means once this button is clicked, trigger the add item to list function in our script. So that is what this does. And now we can go back to JavaScript and set some stuff. So as I said, we're going to be using Ajax for this in this function. And before you can use jQuery or Ajax, you need to kind of import it right here in your heading. So what we're just going to do is I'm going to show you how to import that. So you just need to have a script. So right here, we're just going to say script, and then we're just going to close that, and we're just going to say the source is this URL. So this is the URL to import Ajax or jQuery to be specific. Now, once again, all of this code is going to be in the description in this video. So if you're stuck or you can't really see anything well on the screen, just get it from the source code. So now that you've added that, we can come down in here and then actually add our code. So what we need to do is to, as I said, submit this particular form. So it's just a button. So we need to submit this form. So the form is just basically the movie ID, and what we're submitting is the user that is adding it to the list. So what we're going to do now is that right here, we're going to create a new variable, say const modal equals to document dot get element by ID. So we want to get the whole movie modal. So that ID is this. If we come up here, you're gonna see this movie modal. So we want to get this whole modal. And the next thing we want to get is the movie ID. So we're gonna say var movie ID is equals to modal. So now we're getting it from this modal right here, dot query selector. Now what we want to get is, if we come up here under movie ID, under movie modal, we're trying to look for where we see an A tag. So right here where we see an A tag, this is what we're looking for. So what we are just saying is like under the modal content. So under modal content, we're going to look for an A tag, and then we want to get the link. So the link right here is movie.html, but remember we wrote a script that's going to change this link to the specific link that we need. So we're going to get that. So we need to make sure we're copying the right thing. So we want to get it from this class under this div tag. Then we're going to get this link. So what we're just going to do is right here, we're going to say dot modal content, get the A tag, and then I want the value of the hyperlink like this. Now we have the movie ID, and the movie ID is what we need. For the user, we can get that in the backend. Now what I'm just going to do is to kind of paste in an Ajax code right here. So it's like a jQuery static code, and you're going to see it, and I'm going to explain everything. So this is the code. So this is just an Ajax. So this is how we submit. Basically, we're submitting a form. It just allows us to submit a form without refreshing the page. That is how to explain it in a basic way. So now the URL is like the action where we're sending this form to. So we're saying we're sending it to the add to list URL. If I come here, you're going to see that is this URL we're talking about. So we're sending it to that specific URL. And then if we come back in here, we're using the type post. We're giving it the movie ID. The data that we're submitting is movie ID, and that is this. And we're giving it CSRF token because we're using a post method. And this success, so what we are just doing, I'm going to explain this later after we basically do the backend in the views, or I could also explain it now. So what this is just saying is that once we get a response, we're just going to say add to list button data.message. So add to list button is basically this button right here. So if we come into the modal right here, so add to list button is this button. So instead of add to list, we want the text on there to change to the data.message, and the data.message will be something like item is added to list, or this has been added to list. We're going to take care of that in the views. But then if something goes wrong and we have an error, we just want to show that error. Now let's go into this add to list and collect these details. I'm going to save this, and now we're going to come back into views, and right here in views we're going to write a block of code. Now what we're going to do here, once again, we're going to say if request the method is equals to post. So if it's post, then we want to do something, but if it's not post, then we want to return an error. So we're just going to pass again, but I'm just going to say return error. So let's just comment that out. So this is the basic syntax of what we are going to do. So now if the request.method was post, what we want to do is to get the ID. So what we're going to do is to say movie. We're going to say movie underscore URL underscore ID will be equals to request dot post dot get movie underscore ID. So now this is the movie ID, but the thing is that we actually need to get the main ID. So I'm going to explain what I mean. Remember, if we come in here, what we are passing in is, if I can look for it, is the movie ID. The movie ID right here is the hyperlink in this A tag, And remember that this hyperlink is not just the ID, it is basically the whole link. If you can remember right here when we did that, so if I come all the way right here, so where we have this is the hyperlink right here. So data video URL. This is the ID we need, but this is the whole thing that is being sent right here into views. So right now we have move/movie/the ID. So what we need to get is the actual ID, and to get that ID out of that, we're going to use regex. Of course, there are various ways we can do this. We can even try to just strip it out right here and maybe pass it directly or some way, but this is just another way we can do it. So after getting the movie ID, the whole movie URL, so this is basically the movie URL, not the movie URL ID. So let's just leave it like that though. And we're going to use regex, regular expressions, to basically strip out the ID from this. And I'm going to show you how to do that. So we're going to have like a pattern. So we're going to write a UUID pattern. So we're going to use regex to recognize the UUID pattern from this URL, movie URL. So I'm going to paste this in, and this is the regex that recognizes it. So it's a regular expression code that recognizes it. And once you have that, what you need to do is match. So we need to match. We're going to say re.search. So we need to make sure we have re in imported. So we're going to say import re. So that's basically how we import regex. Let's also import one thing while we're still here. So from Django.http, import JSON response. So this JSON response is how we're going to send a response back to this index.html right here, where we can actually get the response. Where is it? Right here. So we're going to use JSON response. Now let's scroll back down right here. And now that we're here, what we can just do is to now say re.search. So we're looking for this pattern, UUID pattern, in movie URL ID. So once we get that, what we're just going to do now is say movie ID. So the actual ID now is going to be match.group. So match.group. So this match.group, I will say if match else none. So this is basically going to get the ID and store it in movie ID. Now that we now have the movie ID, what we're going to do is to say, we're going to come here and say the movie. Now the actual movie that is going to be added to the list, we're going to get that. So we're going to use get object of 404. So I'm going to import that from shortcuts. So we're going to say from Django.shortcut import get object, get object of 404. Now the reason why we're doing this is because it's a very quicker way to just kind of like search through a database or search through all the objects in a model. So for us to do this now, we're going to say get object of 404, and what it's doing is that it just gets a specific object. In this case, we're getting an object from the movie model, in which the UUID, let's make sure we can see that, the UUID, so if we come here, we're looking for the movie model, in which the UUID, this UUID, is equals to the movie ID that we kind of like generated or created or collected right here. So now it's going to look for this. If it doesn't find this, it's just going to return a 404 error. So once we have that, what we can now do is to just say, we're going to come here and say created. Actually, we want to say movie list underscore list. Let's just create that, and let's also create created equals to. Now we're going to say movie lists So now, since we already got that movie, we now want to create that into the database. So for us to do that, we need to import it. So we're going to say from .models import movie and import movie list. So now we can go back here and now say movie list dot object dot get or create. Now get or create means if the user has already added this list to this movie to their list, then we just want to get that movie, and it's going to tell us if that movie is basically already in the list. If the movie is already in the list, we want to tell them movie already is in the list. But if it's not in the list, then we want to create a new list. So we're going to say owner. Let's just make sure we're writing the right thing. So the owner, which is, if we come here, owner user, that is the name we gave it. We're going to create and say it's going to be request.user. So this is how you get the user that is currently logged in. We say request.user, and then the movie, let's make sure that is movie, yes, should be equals to this movie right here. So we're just going to say movie equals movie. So that is what we need. But this is now done. It has been successfully added to the database, but we want to kind of send a response. We have to send a response. So we want to check if this has been created. If it has been created, then we're going to say that we've added this to the list. But if it kind of got a response and says this is already in the list, then we want to say movie already in the list. So we're going to say if created, say response data. Let's just create a new variable. Let's go data. Just gonna create a new dictionary and say status. Status is gonna be success, and then the message is gonna be added, and we're going to have like a tick mark just to show that it has been added, like this. Now this is if it just created a new object in that movie list database. Else, if it didn't create any object, that means it kind of got a response. That means this object was already present in that particular movie list database. Then we're going to say response underscore data equals status. So we'll just give this something like info, and then we'll say message. So this is the actual response message. We'll say movie already in list. So this is what we need, and now we can just return that data to the front end. So we're going to say return JSON response data. So we need to return it as a JSON response. So this should be working, but the last thing we want to do is right here for the error. We're just going to kind of copy this, paste this here, bring this back like this, and the status is just going to be error, and the message is going to be invalid requests, and we're just going to say, so we want to actually, what we can just do, let's just return this directly. So we just say return JSON response. So we just want to return all of this as a JSON response. And right here, we're going to say status equals 400, like this. And this should be working perfectly fine. Now let's go ahead and test this. If we now come in here, before we test it, let me just make sure everything is working. So now, once we get the response data, it shows it in the button, and it kind of disables the button. And yes, so this should be working. Now let's see. Let's hit refresh. And now let's come here and click on add to list, and let's see what it does. So it should add to list. Good, it says added. Now if I come back in here and I come to movie list, we should have one object in there, and that object should have my details. So if I click on it, you're now gonna see. So once this open, let's give it a second to load. So we have one object, and the owner is Tommy, and the movie is A Fall from Grace. Now this is what we want, this is what we need. It is working successfully. Now let's make a user be able to view their list. So the first thing we want to do is to actually create a new HTML file named mylist. So I'm just going to come here and create a new file under templates, and I'm just going to name it my underscore lists.html. So this is just the basic file. And right here in views, I'm just going to drag this closer. Right here in views, where we have, let me just close this up, my list. I'm just going to say return render request my list.html context. So this context right here, I'm just going to have a basic context. So this is when we get all the list of this particular user. We're going to put it here in context and pass it to my list.html. For now, let's just save this and leave it as it is. And once again, we want this to have login required. So we're going to say at login required, and then we just say login URL equals to login. Let's copy this and paste that here also, so that we can also have it on add to list. Now what we're going to do is to take care of how this looks, because right now my list is just a blank page. So what we can just do is we can make it look very similar to the home page, but instead of having this right here, we're going to remove this, and this is just going to say your list, a very basic page. So we're going to come here, copy this, we're going to copy this, come to my list, paste it. Now what we're going to do is everything is going to literally be the same, but right here where we have, so let's see, we're going to come down, all of this should be the same, this should be the same, but where we have the featured section, so this shouldn't be here. So what we're just going to do is to get rid of that section, and let's go to slash my list, and let's see how it looks. So as you can see, this is how it looks. And right here we can just have something like, so we're going to get rid of this also. So this second one, just close it, get rid of it. So hit refresh. Good. So now we have all of these details and all of this is working. So what we're just going to do is to change this to my list. And this should be good. So now it says my list, and we can, I think this should be all right, or we can just have like a line. So we can have like a basic line. So right here before my list, before this section, we can have an HR, and let's just see how that looks. Compare. Yeah, that looks all right. So now right here we can have my list, and right here instead of this we could have it, so we could say div. Just copy all of this and paste it in here, and like this, just to make it look nice. So now we could align this to the center because it makes more sense. Align equals center. Let's see. Good. So now it makes more sense. And what we can now do is, because we copied it from the index, it already has all this for moving in movies, is looping through. Also the modal is working. Let's see what happens. Okay, there's no one here, so we can't really see anything, but all of this is working. The only difference we need to make is that we need to get where this movie is going to be fetched from. So we kind of need to send this movies list from this right here to this. So what we're going to do now is right here, we're just going to say movie list underscore list should be equals to movie list dot objects. So now we're going to filter with the ones where the owner username, owner user is equals to request dot user. So we're just getting the list of the currently logged in user. And what we're going to do is to say user underscore movie underscore list, give it as a list, and then we can just then say for movie in movie list user movie list dot append. and I want to append movie.movie. Now we can now take movies right here as user movie list. So now let me explain why we did this. So we could have just passed this list straight here, but if we did that, remember that this movie list or model right here is not the actual movie, it's just a list that shows the user and the movie. But we need to get the actual movie from that movie list. So what I did, if I come back in here, was that after getting the movie list, I created an empty list and I looped through that movie list and I appended the movie from that movie into this user movie list. So let me break that down more. So what we did was, after looping through all the movies in this movie list, so basically we looped through all the objects that was gotten from this movie list and we just called them movie. So now we could get the user of this movie by saying movie.user, or we could get the actual movie by saying movie.movie. So what we did was we got the actual movie by saying movie.movie. So if we come in here, you're going to see a one object is basically what we refer to as a movie. And so we're saying that movie.movie. So that gives us the actual object of the movie. Then once we set that movie.movie, we appended it to this user movie list. Now we have just the movie list, and then we're sending it, adding it to the context, giving it the variable movies. And now once we come back in here into my list, we can loop through it. So now we're saying for movie in movies, give us all of this. Now let's test this out. If I come in here and hit refresh, we already have one movie added to our list. So we should see one movie. This is good. This is basically what we need. This is working perfectly fine. Now, if we click on play, let's see what happens. Now it takes us to play that particular movie, A Fall from Grace. Before we move forward, right here where we have this, so right here, just gonna come all the way in the model. So where we have this, for now, let's just remove this. Let's save it and see how that looks. Good. And we could just get rid of this. And then let's do the same for index. I'm gonna go into modal. And we're gonna get rid of all of this. So now a user is able to see the movies in their list, and if they come home, they can see, as you can see, they come home, they can see this. And if they go to my list, then you can see, they can see their list. So let's just test this. Now if I add the night and I click add to list, it says added. Now if I come to my list, you can see that the night is now in my list. So this is good. And what we can do, one more thing we can do is, I want the list that was recently added to show first. So I just added the night, but as you can see, it shows second. So I want it to be in the other way around. We can come back here and just say, so we go into my list, and when we're looping through it, we can say for movies in movies reversed. So that is just going to reverse it and give us the most recent one first. So let's see. Good. So it gives us the most recent one first. Now we can go home. Let's test something we haven't tested yet. So we already have the night in our movie list. If I click on it and say add to list again, let's see. As you can see, it says movie already in list. So we can't really add this again. So that works perfectly fine. Now the next thing we are going to do is to add the search functionality into this application. So we want a user to be able to search for any film they want and get results from that film. So what we're going to do is to first create a new URL. So we're going to come into urls.py. Right now, we're just going to copy this, paste that in there. I'm going to say search. And I'm going to copy, paste. And in views right here, I'm also going to create a new view. So right here, I'm just going to create a new one. Name it search, request. For now we pass, and let's also copy this login required, and save. Now we have that. The next thing we want to do is to create the template file for it. So we want to create search.html. Search.html. So now that we have search.html, we can close this. And right here, what we can just do is when we come back to views, instead of just passing, we can return render request search.html. So now if we come into /search, let's see what happens. Yeah, it's just blank. That's because there's nothing here right now. But what we can do is to just come into my list where we have a list. Let's just copy that list and then paste it in here. So now that we've pasted that list in here, we're pasting the whole code of my list into search.html. This is because we're going to use this basically the same template in here, but just the only thing we're going to change is to just change this from my list to search result. And now right here in search result, we can save this and we're going to go into views. And right here in search, what we just want to do is so if we come into, let's say, index, right here in index where we have this, so remember, let me go back. Remember when we had this search bar? So this is basically like a form, and this form is using a post method. So once a user clicks on something and clicks on search, we want that particular search term to be sent to the backend, and then we want to query the database using that search term. So now what we're just going to do is to come back in here, and then if we go into index, right here where we have the heading, right here, you're going to see the search. And for this search, so I'm just going to come all the way here. We're just going to look for where we have search. So search is just right here. So you see we have this form and we are submitting it to the search URL, which we already created. And now it has a name of search term. So what we want to do is that we want to collect this search term in right here in views. So we're just going to say if request the method is equals to post, then search term will be equals to request dot post search term. And now once we have this, we can now query the database to return the movies that has this search term in the title. Now we're just gonna say movies equals to movie. So we're gonna filter, but this time around we're gonna do something different. So we're gonna say the objects the filter title _ I contains equals search term. Now what this means is that we're filtering all the objects in the movie table or in the movie model to the title. So if we come in here, remember in movies we add an attribute named title right here. Now when we say title and then we add this _2_ and say I contains, it means we're looking for the object that contains this search term in the title. So this I contains means in the title, is this search term present in there? So we're basically looking for any movie that has this search term in the title. Now once we get that, we can then just say context equals, and then we could just send the movies that we got, and then the next thing we could just send is the search term. Search term. So that is basically what we need. So if all of this is true, then yes, we do this. Else, just redirect them back to the home page. So if they're just trying to go to that page without like sending any request, take them back to the home page. Let's try this out. So now we're just gonna hit refresh, and now let me search for, so we have three, we have homeland. Let me search for home and click enter. So search results, it shows blank. Let's see why. If we come into search, we have for movie in movies, and right here we have movies sent to search.html. And so we say if request up, this is post. So that is because we didn't send context to the HTML page. Now let's come back in here and hit refresh, and let's see. We search for home, good. So now we can see homeland as part of it. We can pop it up, we can play. This is good. This is basically what we need. Now, as you can see, that is working perfectly fine. Now let me look for a term that is in both. So this is the night agent, okay, what we can just do is to come in here. I'm going to come into movies, and I'm going to change a fall of grace. I'm going to say the fall of grace. So I'm going to change this to the fall of grace. So let's see. Save and continue editing so we can change it back. So that is saved. It should be saved. Let's see. Done. And now if I come here and I say, so let me hit refresh, and then I come here and then I just say the fall of grace search. As you can see, the brings out two different things, because the fall of grace and the night agent. So let me just change it back to the actual one. So let's just say save, and now that is going to be saved. Now that is working, the search term is working. Let's just change one more thing, and that thing is if I come right in here into search.html. So right here where we have search result, what I'm just going to do is say search result for, let's have the search term here. Let's call term. So now if I come back in here, I hit refresh and I say night, and I hit search. Now you're going to see that I say search result for night, and this is the search result for night. So now we can just go back to the home page, and this should be working perfectly fine. Now we've successfully added this search term, and that is working fine. Now that that is done, the last thing we need to do is to create the genre page. So first of all, remember when we came here, this genre, if I hit refresh on the home page, this genre wasn't showing, so wasn't too sure why it wasn't showing, but the reason was because we weren't linking. So if we come here, come all the way here, we weren't linking the styles correctly and the JavaScript file. So if I come into index.html, so I'm going to come into index.html right here. So you need to make sure that this style is being linked correctly, and also you need to make sure that your script is correctly placed in the same place. But then apart from that, what we need to do next is to create the genre page. So we're going to come in here, and right here I'm just going to close this, and I'm going to come to templates, and I'm going to say genre.html. Now what I'm going to do is to create a new URL. First of all, that URL is going to be for the genre, and I'm going to come into this, and I'm going to copy this movie as it's quite similar to what I want. I'm going to change this to genre, and then views.genre name should be genre. So let's get rid of this. So genre. Now good, this is what we want. And right here in views, I'm gonna come to views.py, just gonna close this up, and we need the genre page. I'm just gonna come down here also. I'm gonna kind of copy this, all of this, like this, and we're just gonna have genre. Now as you can see, we are doing the same thing we did for movies, where we add a dynamic URL. Now this is because we want to have something like genre slash. So if we come here, we want to have genre slash the name of the genre, then it's going to show all the movies relating to that genre. So well, we're going to come back in here, we're going to get the name and store it as PK. And for now, we're just going to return render request for genre.html. I'm going to save that. That is what we're going to do for now. And then the next thing we're going to do is to get the movie genre. So movie underscore genre equals to PK. And then we're going to get the movies. So for now, let's leave this. And we're going to come back into genre. And I'm just going to copy this search like this. And I'm just going to paste it in here because we're going to use the same, basically the same code is going to look the same. The only thing that is going to change is right here where we have search for, we're going to say movies, something like movies for this genre. So we're just going to do that right here. And we're just going to say let's say something like drama films. So let's imagine the genre was drama. So we'll say drama films. And let's just give this like this. So this is how this should look like. So let's say we come to slash genre slash drama. That is how it looks like. Good. Right now there's no film, nothing. So what I'm just going to do is to get all the movies that are in this genre. And we don't really need it to be reversed. We're just going to get rid of that. And now we're going to come into views. So we need two things. We need to get the actual movies genre. We already have that from PK. And then we need to get all the films in that genre. So now we're just going to say, it's very easy. So we just say movies equals to movie dot object dot filter genre equals movie genre. So this just gives us what we need. And now we can just have context equals, so we can just say movies and give it movies, and also movie genre and give it that. Make sure we have our comma and our comma. So now we can pass this context into the genre.html. So if I save this, let's just make sure everything is nice. Automatically this should be reflected. The only thing that's not going to be reflected is the movie genre name. So we're going to come here and under, so right here we have genre. Right here, instead of drama, I'm just going to say movie genre films. Now let's try this. For drama, I think the movies we added were dramas. Good. So 2 movies was drama, Homeland and A Fall from Grace. If I click on it, we have all the details of everything that we need. If I click on this, we have all the details of everything that we need. We could add to list, remove from list, whatever. Now, one more thing is, this is not really looking nice. We want the first letter to be capital. So we could use that using, I'm going to do that using title. So once you just say movie genre with this and title, it's going to change that. Now it refresh. Good. Drama films. Now this is nice. This is what we need. If I come back to home right here, now what I want to do is that when I click on any of this, it should take me to the movies. So I'm going to come back, and what I'm just going to do is to go into index.html right here, and on this, we already did this when we pasted this code in earlier in this tutorial. So now automatically when we go to slash genre slash action, it's going to take us to action. Slash genre slash drama is going to take us to drama. Let's try it out. So drama is just going to take us straight to drama. As you can see, that works. And now that works perfectly fine. Now the next thing I'm going to do before we move on is I'm going to add a bunch of movies. So we're going to have like a lot of movies to work with. And I'm kind of gonna get rid of this because we don't really need that. And that's what I'm going to do right now. So actually I'm going to add a bunch of movies, but I'm not going to waste your time by showing you all of them. So what I'm just going to do is I'm going to pause the video right here. So I'm going to add it myself, and once I'm done, I'm going to be back. Now I have added a bunch of movies here, and if we come back to our application and we hit refresh, you're going to see that we have some movies right here. Good. So now we have all these movies, we can add to the list, we can watch them, and everything is working perfectly fine. Now, the last thing we're going to do is to add a feature section here. So this feature section is not really showing anything. It's just some static data. So what we're going to do is to come back in here, and right here let's first go to views and actually get a featured movie. So how do we get a featured movie? Let's just get, let's say, the most recent movie that has been added. So to do that, we're just going to say featured underscore movie equals to movies, and then we'll just say, let's get the length of movies. So the length, how many movies is here, and then we're going to get -1. So what we're doing is we're getting the amount of movies that is in this. So if the amount of movies is 10, we want to get the 10th movie. So this is basically going to be 10. So we're saying movies 10. So we're going to get the movie with the index of 10. But because this is index number, length of movie is going to give us the actual number. But remember, index number starts from 0. So we have to put -1 to get that actual last movie. So that is what this featured movie section does. And now what we can just do is to copy this right here, and then we could just paste this in here. Right there, featured movie. Now we could copy that featured movie and come into, let's go to index.html, and right here where we have this section, we're just going to say this is the feature section, but instead of this, we're going to say this featured movie.title, and then for the next one, which is the description, we're just going to say featured movie.description, and close that. And then for the URL, so when they click on play video, we're going to take them to featured movie dot. Actually, this is going to be different because this is going to be UUID underscore ID. But remember that the URL is /movie/UUID. And for this button, we could just get rid of this button. We don't really need it. And now once we hit save, come here and hit refresh. Let's see what it shows us. So it shows us suits. This is the description suits you, and then we could play. For this background, we can change it also. So right here where we have this background, I'm just gonna change this real quick. Get rid of all of that. Just gonna go back, get rid of that. Okay, that's still a lot, so I'm just gonna keep going back and getting rid of that. And let's go to where we see HTTP. Good. So now what we're just going to do is to say featured movie dot. Let's come back to models and see what the name is. We want to get the cover, not the card. So dot cover dot URL. Let's come back in here and hit refresh, and then let's see what it shows us. Good. So as you can see, we have this right here. So this is not really nice because this is a white background and this is also white. So we could just manually change that to a black. And what we can do is right here where we have the title, we could just say style, or we could just say style for the old div. Actually, let's just style only this. Color black, and we could just copy that, paste that in here, and hit refresh. And let's see how that looks. So that looks nice. Now we could write like an advanced system that detects the background color and then gives this another color based on the background color, but we're not going to do that. We're just going to keep this as it is. So this is how it looks like right now. It looks quite nice, it looks decent. Now the last thing we're going to do is just to clear up the whole application. So right now we don't really need this. We could do something here. Instead of having this, we could have like your list. We could show the user their list right here, like the movies they've added to their list, but we already have a page for that. So I think this is fine. We're just going to get rid of this. Let's come back in here to index, and where we see right here where we have this section. Get rid of that, get rid of it, and this, and now let's hit refresh again, and now everything should be perfectly fine. And as you can see, everything is perfectly fine. So this is good, this is nice, everything is working fine. Now I'm just going to come in here and just check everything. So now we can click on genre and we can see the action, we can see films for that. We can go back to the home, we can go back to list, we can search for movie. Let's search Lupin, and then it shows us this, and then we can play that movie, we can add it to the list, and this is it right here. And we can go back to the home page. So if we just go back to movies, it's gonna take us to the home page. So now everything is working perfectly fine, and this is the end product of this application that we've built. Now we are going to deploy this application onto the web. So once again, we are going to be using Flow to deploy this. But before we even use Flow, we need to make sure that this application is already pushed to GitHub. So we need to create a GitHub repository and push it to GitHub. And before we do that, there are some things we need to set up to be ready to actually deploy this application. So let me show you what they are right now. So the first thing we need to do is to have, so I'm going to come back in here, right here in my settings. So right here on the top, we need to make sure we have OS installed. Now that we know we have OS installed, the next thing is under allowed hosts, we need to allow hosts, so that I'm going to just put this to star. So this is going to allow any multiple or basically any host to be, for application to be hosted on any domain. And we can make it specific. When we deploy our application, we can then change this to just that domain to be allowed, just for more security. But we could leave that as that for now. And then the next thing that we want to do is to scroll all the way down. We're going to scroll all the way down. We need to make sure our static files are set. So this is done, and we are going to run the collect static command just to make sure that is good. And we're then going to come down under media right here. We're actually going to add some stuff. So the first thing I'm going to add is CSRF trusted origins. Now this is because when we are having a post method or form that is using a post method, we need to specify the trusted origins. So these trusted origins, just like allowed host, we could specify just our domain. We might change that after deploying it and we already have our domain. So we could specify our domain to only be allowed to be as a trusted origin, so that only that domain can receive or send a post request. But for now, let's just allow all origins. And then the last thing that we're gonna do is right here, I'm gonna kind of paste this in. So CSRF cookie true, session cookie true, and we also need to add the secure proxy SSL header, and this is what you need to set. Now this is basically what we need to do regarding our settings.py. We also need to make sure our database is set correctly. That is done. Now the next thing you need to do is to come here and open up this. Just gonna close this up, and this. And the next thing that I want to do is to just right here, I'm just gonna create a new file, and I'm gonna name that file requirement.txt. So in this requirement.txt, I'm just gonna kind of paste I'm gonna paste this in. So these are just the libraries and modules that we used in this application that are required. So you can just type this in directly, or if you want to generate yours, what you can do is to run. So open up your terminal and run pip3 freeze the greater than sign requirement.txt. Once you run this, it's going to generate it for you, and that should take care of that. Once you have that done, the last thing that you need to do, this is quite important, you need to have your proc file. I'm going to save this. Let's save this file, and then you need to create something named proc file. So once you create this proc file, this is how we basically create, or this is how we are able to tell our deploying, so the platform we're using to deploy, this is how we're able to tell it what port we're using and all of those type of settings. So right now I'm just going to paste this in and let me show you. So this is what we're doing. So this Netflix clone should be the name of the application. Now let's see, let's open this up. So the name of ours is Netflix site, so we're going to change that from Netflix clone to Netflix site, because that should be the name of your Django project. The WSGI application, as I said, it specifies what port that our application should be running on. Let's make sure all of this is good. So Netflix site and port. This port is going to be taken from the environment variable, which we're going to set in flow. Now all of this is done. The next thing we need to do is to just create a new. So what we just need to do is to create a new GitHub repository and then push this code onto that repository. So now I'm going to come in here and I'm going to do GitHub. So log into GitHub and I'm going to create new repository and I'm just going to say Netflix clone. Or I could just say Django Netflix clone, like this. And now I'm just going to create the repository. And what I'm just going to do is to start like this and say git init. So right here, I'm going to open up my terminal. I'm trying to push this code onto the GitHub repository we just created. So I'm going to initialize. And then what we need to do is to just say git add. We're going to add everything. And that should do it. And then right here, we're just going to copy all of this command because GitHub already gave us. And actually, we're not going to run that because that is going to give us, we're going to run it one after the other. So let's just cancel all of this and this. So like this, good. And then let's branch to main, good. And then we're going to have to run remote add origin, good. And now let's just push it. So let's give it a few seconds to push. That shouldn't take a long time. And this should push in a bit. So right here, this has been successfully pushed and I could just close this. And what I'm going to do is to just come in here. And if I hit refresh on this, just also open it in a new tab, same thing. Right here, you can now see that every single thing has been added here. So now that we have this in GitHub, the next thing we can do is to open Flow. I'm going to open a new tab and I'm going to go to flow.com and I'm just going to sign in again and I'm going to sign in with my GitHub account. So I already signed in before, it should automatically recognize that. Now the next thing I want to do under Netflix project, I'm going to go in there and this time around I'm going to add new. I'm going to create a new application. So I want to deploy a new application. So I'm going to connect my GitHub repo and this is what I'm going to do. So I'm going to click on this. I'm going to give it access to all repositories and then I'm going to sign in. So right now it's going to redirect me back here. So now it's going to load up all of my, as you can see, everything is loaded up. And now I'm going to click on the one. So the one I want to deploy is Django Netflix clone. It's very easy and very straightforward. As you can see, it says gives your application a name. Let's leave it as it is. And we want to deploy main. And we're just going to leave this as it is. And for the environment variable, the port is going to be 8000 because Django responds to 8000. And now we can open up this first. What we just want to do is to say we're going to use build pack. So this build pack basically detects and builds automatically. It kind of detects the application that you have without you having to input a Docker file that is going to give you full control of the whole build process. So just click on this and it already we can leave this blank because the root directory is already the directory we've provided. So just leave that blank and click on deploy your app. Now we're just going to wait for that. And as you can see, it has started deploying. It says queued. So it's going to deploy and it's going to show you everything right here. And I'm going to be back once this has deployed. Now, as you can see, everything has been deployed successfully. It says deploy. If I open this, you're just going to see all the logs of everything that deployed. Now, this is nice. Everything deployed without any error. So this is good. As you can see, it says it is listening at the port 8000. Now let's actually test this. So let's copy the URL. This is the URL it deployed at. It has been copied, and now we're just going to paste it on here. As you can see, our application has been deployed. So as you can see right here, we can see it. The only problem is that we don't have the static files. So we don't have no CSS files, we don't have no styling, and this is going to be a problem. So what we can do is we need to change something. So right here, before we deployed our application, so right here, if I pop up my terminal back again, we didn't run something called collect static. So you need to run python 3 manage.py collect static. So whenever you are deploying your project to production, you need to make sure you run it. And once you run it, it's going to create another file named collect static that has the styling for the admin and your assets. Now that you have that, what we just need to do is to redeploy. So we're just going to do git init again. And then we're just going to come here and just take all of this code. And then we could just basically copy everything. And then we could just make this and say update. Yes, and it has seen what to include static files. We already branched all of this, but I just like doing the same routine again. And then we could just do this again, and then this again. So now, as you can see, it says, okay, now it says everything is up to date, but everything isn't. This is because after reinitializing, let's just start it again. We didn't do git add, so we need to do git add. Now, once we do that, we can say commit. We can just say changes. Good, that is what we want to see. And after committing branch, should say we already exist because it already exists. And then we could just push. Now let's give it a few seconds. That has been done successfully. And now right here, if we come back to flow, you're going to see that automatically it has seen the changes we made and it's just going to start redeploying. So let's view the logs again. Once we view the logs, so this is going to start redeploying. I'm going to pause the video and I'm going to be back once this has been done. So as you can see, it has been deployed successfully. Now when I come back in here and when I click on refresh, you can see that right here it shows with the styling and everything is working perfectly fine. Now this has been done. We have successfully deployed this application to the web using Flow. So let me just show you around. So right here, this is what we've deployed, and we can just come to the settings and you can see this is, first of all, this is the domain, and right here is the GitHub repository that we deployed. And you can see that Flow automatically detected that we were using Django. We didn't have to specify, we didn't have to, put in our Docker file or anything like that. Flow automatically knew that, which is why I really like this. And right here, you can just have all the settings. So you can change the name. You can't really change the name. I think you can view the name. You can view the source repo. And this is the custom URL. I believe you can change that if you want. And to get a custom domain, that is coming soon. But once you have that, you can also add your own domain. And this just shows the region. This allows us to choose automatic deployment, and this allows us to delete our application. So these are just other settings for build and scalability. And right here, you can also set environment variables. And we set the port for 8000 as the environment variable. So apart from that, everything has worked successfully. We were able to deploy our application, and we're able to deploy our Postgres database using Flow. So that was how easy it was to build all of this. So that is the end of this whole tutorial, and I hope you enjoyed everything we did in this course, and I hope you learned a lot. And if you did, please don't forget to smash the like button and subscribe. Once again, there will be a link in the description below where you can access Flow, or go to flow.com and sign up, and you can access all of this that we're doing. So having that said, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.